Hi everyone. So I'm back with the second book of today, and I am always interested in your book requests. So never hesitate to comment and tag me in the comments with books that you would like. And if I have it here in my library, I will absolutely read it. If you scroll up in my feed, you can see all of the other read alouds that I have done this past week, and I'm really looking forward to this one. So this was a request from my son, who has a silly sense of humor, and this one is called Moosetache, and it was written by Margie Palatini and illustrated by Henry Cole. Whoops, I'm just gonna have to give me 1 second here. There we go. All right. Moose had a problem, a horrible, hairy, prickly problem. It grew right below his nostrils and just above his upper lip. A moosetache. No, I think that's pretty silly. Now, not a few spare hairs or shy little stubble. No mere weak wandering whiskers on the upper lip of this moose. No siree. Moose had a big, bushy, bristly, mighty mustache. But a mustache that was a burly, surly, mangy mess, and it itched a lot. So he plucked and he tweezed, he even clipped, snipped and teased, but his combs were still cowards and his brushes rebelled. His scissors simply surrendered. Moose was in a frizzy tizzy. The mustache was completely crimping his style. He was a great hoofer, but he could barely bop and hip-hop with a mustache going flip-flop. That is one huge mustache. He was a wonderful chef, but he simply could not flambe his soufflé with all those whiskers in the way. And he was a daring skier, but how could he downhill race with the mighty mustache blowing in his face? Moose had to do something, and soon. But what? After days and days of much serious thought, Moose got an idea. He crossed some hairs here, he crossed some hairs there, and he tied his mustache around his neck. A moose scarf seemed to be the ideal answer to his problem. It was so simple, so easily, so perfectly perfect. I don't know. But then his mustache got knotted and mangled and horribly tangled, and those hundreds of hairs still prickled and tickled. Worse, Moose could barely take a breath with all that mustache wrapped around his neck. So Moose untied, unwrapped, unknotted, and gulped in some fresh air. He got another idea. He parted some hairs. This way he parted some hair that way, and he heaped all that mustache on top of his head. Mustachio antlers seemed to be the ideal answer to his problem. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect, until a squadron of squirrels and one very nosy gopher moved right in the Moose Motel. They huddled and hoarded, furrowed in and burrowed out. Needless to say, it became quite crowded up there on Moose's head, and heavy and messy. And very, very noisy. The squirrely chitting and chatting, squeals and squawks woke Moose every minute before the crack of dawn, and that gopher was giving the mouse one hairy headache. Moose needed his sleep. He needed his rest. He needed his privacy. "Moustachioed antlers? Nuts," said the moose. So he unparted and unpiled, untwisted and untwined, and said adios to the hairy horns. But now what? What? The miserable moose took hold of a hunk of hair, and he wrestled it, then he roped it, he tethered, tied, tamed. Ah, moose tail! Now that was so simple. That was so easy. That was not so perfectly perfect. Talk about a dizzy do. Moose didn't know if he was coming or going. Backward, forward, this way, that. He didn't know which end was which. Moose had to bail on the tail. So silly. And so he thought and thought and thought some more, but no other idea was a worthy winner. Braids were a bother, a moustache sweater too sweltering. Next, net? Not. Poor Moose. Oh, his problem was truly terrible, unbearable, just downright sad. He felt so alone, he didn't know what else to do. Then, call it fate, call it destiny, it was probably dumb luck. But one day Moose tripped on his moustache and just had no time to duck. Oomph! Pardon me, they both said as they bumped. Then they blinked and they stared, and their hearts went thump-a-thump. She was a moose with a bouffant so bodacious, outrageous. Well, it was just plain old big. Hair after hair piled higher than high, a skyscraping dew of glorious curls, a tower of swirling twists and twirls. She was simply splendid, stupendous, absolutely superb. Of course, Moose had to ask how she did what she did to get such a do. Miss Moose winked and then whispered, "Just a little glue." So she helped him fearlessly plunge a hoof into a fat pot of the white gooey goop, and carefully, oh so carefully, they gloped, and they plopped, they pasted and they pressed, they coaxed and curled every truly unruly wayward whisker. Around and around they tweaked and twirled those horrible hairs until Moose's once mangy mess was now a wondrous winding wave of marvelous moustache. Moose gazed in the mirror and smiled a broad moosey smile. He was so happy, so glad, just giddy with glee. He looked dashing and handsome. Moose gushed, "Is that really me?" With not a care for one hair, the moose boogied and bopped. They skied downhill, even uphill, and their cooking was hot, hot, hot. So, of course, it wasn't long after that Moose and his moustache and his beautiful bride foxtrotted and tangoed and waltzed down the aisle. Good hair days, bad hair days, they vowed to love and to cherish, and with hearts heaped with love and pots filled with goop, they both sighed, "I do glue," and promised never to part. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect, and it stuck. Such a silly tale. Moosetache, a book written by Margie Palatini and illustrated by Henry Cole. I hope you've enjoyed this silly story, and I will see you tomorrow. Don't forget, in the comments below, let me know if you have a request. Have a good day.